going to speak on journalistic blinders.
A little over a week ago, media throughout the country got wind of a lawsuit right here in our backyard. The Utica City School District was being sued for denying refugee students access to high school. The New York Times, Al Jazeera, even BuzzFeed got wind of the story, and the community was shocked that this was going on right here. But I wasn't. For my senior thesis in comparative literature, I explored how media has covered refugee resettlement in Utica. As a long-term volunteer at the Refugee Center, I knew that these violations had been happening in Utica since 2007. So what prevented this story from coming out? To give you some background, refugee high school students have been denied access to high school through the form of an alternative certification program known as the Newcomer Program. Unlike their native-born peers, newcomer students do not receive a high school diploma nor a GED. They do not have a certified ESL teacher. They do not get free reduced school lunch, and they receive no content instruction or school buses. This is obviously against the law. So I started doing research on the press that had come out of Utica over the past few years and pored over local and national sources, reading every piece I could find. And I realized that media was covering Utica very regularly with reports on the refugee population. Utica was a city that loves refugees, the media told me. And both local and national papers were utilizing this theme again and again, as Utica being a welcoming home for refugees. So I was wondering, why weren't these stories coming out in these pieces? And I realized one of the reasons was that reporters were not speaking to refugees themselves. Instead, they were just speaking to community members, but the refugee voice was silent. Additionally, when refugees were included in the piece, the stories that were told about them were very stereotypical, using tropes, instead of using the nuance that these people were actually experiencing in their lives. So the characterizations that journalists were creating about refugees had prevented the stories from emerging that were actually happening in the community, and were only focusing on the positive components of resettlement. Additionally, I found that journalists were not speaking the languages of many refugees, and this also had prevented the story from coming out because interpreters were so infrequently used. Lastly, paternalism was a major theme in a lot of the reports that I found, and it didn't surprise me that when reporters were writing about what would be best for refugees, the refugee voice itself was not part of the story. Also, oversimplification of major problems created this issue as well. So this research demonstrates that we need better investigative reporting in order to really understand the story of Utica and to prevent civil rights violations like this from continuing. Thank you.